This is Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque. 17 years on air and online, helping you succeed in buying, selling, and investing in property. The best real estate strategies out there, just for you.
Welcome to Real Estate This Week. Hi again, I'm Stephen Gasque, and I'm so glad you're here as we help you nail it, no matter what kind of real estate you want to do. Just you, me, and the best real estate guests in the country. Today, we'll continue our special series about buying a home with a big challenge, coming up with the cash, looking at the down payment, the closing costs, and other things you'll need money for. We'll talk about how to get that cash and hopefully get the house. So, let's get right to it. Joining us now is Laura Adams, Senior Analyst at the online real estate education school, AceableAgent, and the host of the Money Girl podcast, which, by the way, has been downloaded more than 44 million times. Laura's also the award-winning author of several books, including Money Girl's Smart Moves to Grow Rich. Laura, welcome to Real Estate This Week.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's great to be with you.
I am so glad you're here. So, Laura, as people face the possibility of buying a home of their own, we all know the biggest barrier is coming up with that down payment. So let's talk about how to come up with the money in today's market. Laura, if you wanted to buy your very first house right now, what would you do to get that down payment?
Well, I recently did buy a home. It wasn't my first home, but it really is, going to be the same process. I think setting a goal is where you're going to begin, and that really depends on the price of the home that you want to buy or that you think you can afford, and really looking at what you already have in savings and maybe how to fill the gap. And if you're not sure, if you're brand new to an area, you're brand new to real estate, you might want to speak with a professional about, what are the average price of homes in this area, or the home that I want to buy, what is that going to cost me? And then kind of working backwards to figure out what you're going to need to save. And typically, I encourage people to try to save 20% if possible so that they can skip the extra private mortgage insurance or PMI to make it a little bit more affordable. But if you can't do that, it's not the end of the world. You can get rid of that PMI payment eventually as you build more equity. But figuring out, what is the down payment you want to make? 10%, 15%, 20%. And also keeping in mind closing costs. A real estate professional can help you get a ballpark on what you'll need in addition to that down payment. Some of these expenses you'll need to pay at closing. So setting a goal and working backwards to figure out what is that chunk of cash that I'm going to need. That's the first step.
Excellent, Laura. And let me ask you about that. How much should a person save? I mean, many people who are looking to buy a house are doing two things with their money. One, they're paying down their debt so they'll look better when they qualify for a mortgage. And also, they're trying to come up with a nice pile of money for that down payment and the closing costs. What's the strategy there?
Yeah, I do think trying to cut expenses where possible, certainly that's going to help free up more money for you to save. You might also think about increasing income, whether that's temporary or permanent, really just kind of trying to do everything possible. If you can cut expenses and increase your income simultaneously, that's kind of the secret to really coming up with extra money to save. And then figuring out, where are you going to put that money? What are you going to do with it? If you want to buy a home pretty quickly, maybe within the next year or so, a high yield savings account might be a good idea. But if you're thinking longer term, like buying a home in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, you might consider some investment options to help those funds grow even more. So it does depend on your timeline and maybe what you're willing to sacrifice in order to get the home maybe a little bit more quickly by cutting expenses and increasing income, or maybe doing it a little bit more slowly over time if you're not willing to sacrifice quite so much.
Excellent. And Laura, you just made a really important point about the savings aspect, which is to find a savings account that pays you the most interest possible, a high yield account. How do you find that?
Yeah, there are a lot of great sites where you can just Google, high interest savings account. A lot of things will come up. There are some platforms like finder.com that will kind of do the homework for you. They compare a lot of different banks and different platforms to figure out what's paying the most interest right now. You really just have to do your homework and don't get too bogged down in trying to find the absolute highest number. If you can just get a good amount of savings, a relatively high yield is going to be good for you. Don't try to chase yield obsessively because, that can drive you crazy. But think about what you're getting right now in your bank account. If you're a typical saver, you might be getting 1%, maybe even 0.5%. If you're saving for a big goal like a down payment, you want to get more than that. So thinking about, right now, I would say 3%, 4%, that would be a nice target. So finding what's going to be the best yield for you, that's convenient. It could be an online bank account. In many cases, they're paying more than brick and mortar banks and credit unions are. So yeah, just do a little bit of research and compare, and don't be afraid to try some new institutions if the one you're using now isn't paying much.
I see. And Laura, back to something I asked you about a few minutes ago. If I have some credit card debt and I want to pay that down, but I also want to save for a down payment, which comes first?
Yeah, it is a really interesting balancing act, kind of balancing the savings and the debt payoff. I always recommend paying off high interest debt first. If that is something you're struggling with, something like credit card debt that's charging, let's say, double digits, that very expensive debt is going to keep you from saving. So organize your debt in order of highest to lowest interest rate. I always recommend tackling those high rate, and typically they are credit cards, tackling those high rate debts first. But it's not really realistic to think that you're going to eliminate all your debt. That is something that you need to do simultaneously. So you want to be paying off debt and saving at the same time, if possible. But if all you have is some really high, what I call dangerous debt, it's good to tackle that first before you start a big financial goal like buying a home. It's going to help your credit as well. You want to make sure that you're seen as really favorable, a good borrower in the eyes of a mortgage lender. And so getting rid of some of that debt is going to definitely also increase your credit. That's going to make you look good to a potential lender, which will mean getting a lower rate mortgage, which is going to be less expensive.
Interesting. And Laura, now let me enter what could be considered dangerous territory. Say that I have a nice job and I'm trying to save everything I can for a down payment on my first home. And yet, I've been contributing as much as the company will allow to my 401k plan. What about temporarily knocking that down or knocking that out altogether so I have cash now rather than cash when I retire?
I do think it depends on where you are with your retirement savings goal. If you feel like you've been on target, maybe in the past few years you've been hitting a particular goal for retirement, maybe 10% of your income, 15% of your income per year, that's a great goal to have. If you've been able to hit that, let's say for the past few years, yeah, maybe scaling back, say going to 5% of your income for retirement, if that would allow you to save more for a home, I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't ever really encourage people to stop saving for retirement altogether because it's just such a good habit to have. But yes, I do think that sometimes it does make sense to reduce the amount you're saving for retirement temporarily, increase the savings for the down payment, and just be sure that you get back to those original retirement goals once you have purchased the home, because that's going to be really important. And it's also great to have that cash cushion. You don't want the home to leave you what we call cash poor. You don't want to spend all of your savings, and sometimes people will tap their retirement accounts to buy a home. That's not wise. You want to make sure you've got a nice little nest egg that's working and growing for you, and you still have some emergency savings in the bank, because after you buy the home, you still might need that emergency money. So really making sure you're padding the savings enough to cover that down payment, cover closing, and still have a nice, healthy cash cushion in the bank.
Absolutely. And Laura, you just mentioned something, which is not just reducing your contributions to your retirement fund, but actually dipping into that retirement fund to help pay for that down payment. And you said that's not wise. Tell us why.
Yeah, for most people, if let's say you feel like you're not on target for your retirement, taking money out of a retirement account, whether it's for a loan or in some cases, you can qualify for a hardship withdrawal in order to purchase a primary residence. That is going to be money that is not working for you. While it's out of that retirement account, it's not growing, it's not working for you. And in some cases, hardship withdrawal means you can't contribute to your account for at least 6 months. So that can really set you back. Now, if you are somebody that has a pretty healthy retirement account, you feel like you're on target, there may be some situations, especially if you have a Roth account, which is after tax, which you can tap early with no penalty. There are some situations where taking a little bit could be helpful. But again, you've got to really prioritize and know where this house fits into your overall goals. If the house is if you make that your number one goal, your retirement is definitely going to suffer if you end up leaving yourself with very little for retirement. But if your retirement is on track, I don't think it's the worst thing to take a little bit out of your retirement in order to buy a home, especially if you feel like it's a good value, it's a property that's going to appreciate over time. That could definitely increase your net worth over the long run.
Excellent. And Laura, also, in many of our conversations in the past, you've made a really great point, which is don't ever touch the money you're saving. Rather, use direct deposit from your employer so you don't actually ever see the money. It goes right into a savings account.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of automation. I feel like it just takes a lot of the human element out of saving. We tend to want to spend what we save. We see that pot of money sitting there, and we'll always find an excuse to spend it, right? You want to take a vacation, you want to buy a new car, something is always going to come up. So if you can make it as sort of seamless and just out of, what they say, out of sight, out of mind, make it so that it's very easy to get the money in the account. Try to forget that it's there. That's really the best way to let that money sit and grow. And then you're going to have as much as possible when it does come time to make the down payment. You'll have more. Maybe that means you can afford a higher priced home, or maybe it means even you put down a higher down payment than you had originally anticipated.
Excellent. And Laura, another thing that I've asked you about before, which for me is personally fascinating, is called the no spend month, or it could be the no spend 3 or 4 months, in which you look at just the necessities, gas for the car, groceries for the kitchen, your insurance, your rent, all that, but nothing else. No streaming services, no expensive bottles of wine, no going out to dinner, no movies, nothing. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's great. And it is something that you can figure out where I would say your triggers are. Is it, online shopping? What are the things that are making you overspend that really they're not necessities, they're just wants. And this is a time that you're going to want to pull all of those back. You want to stick to the necessities so that you've got enough free income, free money in your budget to save for this home that you want. So if you really, really want this home, it's going to be worthwhile to make some sacrifices. And the no spend month, or as you said, maybe a quarter or even a year, is just a great way to really challenge yourself and to see what's going on in my life that is a necessity, what's happening that's just a pure wants versus needs. We teach this to young kids, but as adults, we need to remember there are a lot of things that we're buying in our just everyday life that are not necessities. And so if we can cut back, that just means maybe you're going to be able to buy that home a little faster.
Excellent. And Laura, since you're a financial expert, let me also ask you about another possible strategy. Most people have a car loan. Not everybody, but most people do. So let me ask you, is it possible to recast your car loan, in effect, do a refi on your car and get a lower rate?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. It's worth checking into. It does depend on the vehicle that you have, the auto loan you have. But yes, if you feel like you are overpaying for an auto loan, absolutely, seeing if you can get a better rate would free up a little bit more money. Even going from two cars in the family down to one, if you're somebody that works at home or you're not driving that much, maybe you could even do without a second or third vehicle in your household. That could really free up a lot of money. Thinking about the payment, the auto insurance, the maintenance, all the things that go into a car, even just cutting back your vehicle and transportation cost for, let's say, 6 months could free up a lot of money to save for your home.
Excellent. And Laura, I know you to be a really positive person, an optimistic person. So let me ask you this question for the person who's listening to this. Can you really do it? Can you really save 20% for a down payment and another 3% or more for closing costs? Is it really possible?
Anything is possible. It really depends on how much you want the home. And I think it's wise to think about how to get the best value for a home. Maybe that means buying something that's a little less expensive because it needs some repairs. Maybe it's a neighborhood that's a little farther away from town than you had thought about. Or, maybe it's a property that might qualify for some special financing, like a USDA loan. Maybe if you're, been in the military, VA loan, even FHA, there are some options that might let you put less down. Conventional loans, you may be able to go as low as 3%. So thinking about all the alternatives here and really doing your research is going to help you save the right amount. So it's definitely possible. I think it just depends on what your budget is, maybe what sacrifices you're willing to make. And I do recommend shopping around different lenders, getting good advice from different lenders so that you know what you should be saving, even what you need to work on in your finances. Is it building your credit, or is it really just building that savings account? Maybe a combination of the two, getting rid of some debt. All of those things are going to put you in a more favorable light when it comes to getting the best deal on a mortgage.
Excellent. Well, Laura, today you've given us some great ideas on how to save for the down payment and the closing costs, ranging all the way from getting a second job temporarily or putting your savings in a direct deposit account so you never actually touch it, to also the possibility of scaling back on your contributions to your 401k. But Laura, the big question, is all that work worth it?
I do think it is. For the majority of us, buying a home is going to be a very smart investment. Now, if you're somebody living in New York City or you're in San Francisco and you're in a very high rent area, buying a home there may be unaffordable. Renting may be the way to go. But for the vast majority of us who are living in more reasonably priced locations, buying an affordable home that you believe will appreciate in value is definitely a worthwhile goal.
Well, Laura, I really want to thank you for being on the show today and giving us so many great ideas, great tactics, and great strategies for coming up with the cash. Thank you, Laura.
Stephen, thank you so much for having me. It was great.
You're very welcome. Laura Adams, Senior Analyst at the online real estate education school, AceableAgent, and the host of the Money Girl podcast, downloaded more than 44 million times. Laura's also the award-winning author of several books, including Money Girl: Smart Moves to Grow Rich.
You're listening to Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque.
And now it's time for Beyond the Basics, a special segment on Real Estate This Week, in which we bring your real estate knowledge to the next level. So now, as we talk about coming up with the cash for the house, let's address a pretty common scenario. Your parents agree to help. Now that's one of the most generous things any parent could ever do, helping their child with the down payment. It's really wonderful. But it bears mentioning that there's a catch, a big catch, and it's called the gift letter. Say that you're getting a mortgage on the house you want to buy, and your parents agree to help you by giving you $5,000, $10,000, maybe $20,000 towards the down payment. Well, the lender will require your parents to sign a gift letter. It's a document that says that money is in fact a gift, not a loan, and that you will not have to pay your parents back. Now, that can be a really tough conversation. Right after your parents are nice enough to give you money to get that house, then you ask them to sign a letter saying the money is a gift and you'll never have to pay it back. That is one steep hill. But here's why it's necessary. You see, when you get a mortgage, the lender will qualify you based on your current financial situation, your income, your debts, and your credit score. Okay? And if your parents hand over $20,000 and then expect you to pay it back, that would change your debt-to-income ratio. Possibly so much, you wouldn't qualify for the mortgage anymore. So, lenders always require your parents, or any other family member that gives you money for a house, to certify it is a gift and not a loan. And even though it's a touchy situation, it happens all the time. And parents agree to sign the letter all the time. Now, a few years back, I asked a real estate professional why. Why are parents so willing to not only give their kids money for a house, but also to sign that gift letter? And he said something I'll never forget. In his view, he said the parents are delighted to do all of it because they can't wait to get that kid out of their basement. Next time on Real Estate This Week, the appraisal and why that one number can make or break the deal. And until then, I'm Stephen Gasque, and thank you for listening.
A brand new episode of Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque drops every weekend, everywhere. And you're invited to listen, subscribe, and follow us. Just look for Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque. The best real estate strategies out there, just for you.